Throughout this brief, bewildering, and breathtaking life, you will cross paths with countless souls, some arriving gently as softly as the first light of dawn, stretching across the horizon, and others carving their presence into you with lessons so profound they leave marks deep in your marrow. Some will accompany you for years, others only for a fleeting season. Most will fade in time, dissolving like mist in morning sun. Even devotion, even the bonds that once felt unbreakable, may eventually quiet into memory. But when the noise of the world finally recedes, when the crowds drift into shadow, and the echoes of other people's expectations fall silent, one consciousness remains constant. One presence refuses to abandon you. One companion has walked with you since the very beginning and will remain with you until your final breath. The most sacred promise you will ever make begins in that quiet, almost imperceptible instant when you decide to stand by yourself. Truly stand by yourself. When you loosen the shackles of old mistakes and allow yourself to be more than your past, when you touch your own heart with gentleness and whisper, even with trembling lips, "I have not given up on who I am." That moment is not small. It is an act of spiritual revolution, because no other being, no matter how close, how loving, or how intertwined with your fate, can inhabit your moment. No one else can breathe for you, choose for you, set your boundaries, or live inside the truth that belongs uniquely to your soul. Your inner world is sovereign territory, sacred ground. You cannot prevent chaos from sweeping to your doorstep. You cannot eliminate the unpredictability of other people, their wounds, their choices, their storms. But you hold absolute dominion over how you meet what arrives. You decide whether to stay or to walk away, whether to rise or surrender, whether to open the door or close it gently. This authority, both tender and terrifying, is the core of your liberation. Loving yourself is not a luxury reserved only for those who have life figured out. It is a necessity, the flame you carry as you move through uncertainty, the warmth that keeps your spirit from freezing when the world grows cold, the one steady light guiding you when everything else turns harsh or unrecognizable. Self-love is the vow to never desert yourself, no matter who leaves, no matter who stays, no matter what changes. It is the unwavering recognition that you deserve devotion, real devotion, the kind that celebrates your authenticity rather than requiring you to shrink, contort, or dim parts of yourself to be accepted. You deserve connection that does not demand explanation, love that reads your silence as fluently as your words. But before such recognition can arrive from the outside, you must offer it to the one who watches your life unfold from behind your own eyes. Here is the truth many never understand. Self-love is not vanity. It is not denial. It is not pretending your shadows don't exist. Self-love is radical acceptance. It is acknowledging that you are both the wound and the medicine, both the storm and the stillness, both the ache and the healing. It is choosing to sit with your own unfolding even when it is painful, slow, uncertain, or messy. It is staying present with yourself when every old instinct begs you to abandon ship. This is the moment the quantum shift begins. When you stop abandoning yourself, reality responds differently, immediately, unmistakably. Because when you make this choice deeply, sincerely, your frequency changes, not symbolically, physically. Your nervous system steps out of survival mode. Your energy stops scattering in desperate pursuit of external approval. You become coherent, and coherence is magnetic. It draws toward you the people, experiences, and opportunities that reflect self-worth, not because you are chasing them, but because you have become the frequency that naturally attracts them. Most people spend their lives trying to earn love from places never designed to give it. They contort themselves to fit spaces too small for their spirit. They perform, they shrink, they bend until they break, and still the love they crave remains distant or conditional. This is not failure. This is guidance. This is the universe pointing you back to yourself. Every moment you spent seeking appreciation from those unable to recognize your depth was a moment calling you home. The pain was never punishment, it was redirection. Because you cannot receive what you have not yet become. If you do not choose loyalty to yourself, you will overlook loyalty when it is offered. If you do not speak kindly to yourself, every kindness you receive will feel suspicious or undeserved. If you do not honor your worth, you will tolerate relationships that ignore it. The outer world always mirrors the inner contract you have made with yourself. So when the night feels heavy and your value seems difficult to hold, place your hand over your heart and remember you are the oldest friend you have ever known, the most faithful guardian you will ever meet, the one home you will carry through every season of your life. Do not abandon the self that remained when all others disappeared. Do not betray the part of you that kept going when giving up seemed easier. That part is sacred. That part is the doorway into every transformation you seek. But choosing yourself is not a single moment. It is a practice, a returning, a daily, sometimes hourly commitment to stand beside your truth, even when it feels inconvenient, uncomfortable, or misunderstood. Each time you refuse to betray yourself for someone else's comfort, you rewire your reality. You teach your nervous system a new language. You tell the universe with unmistakable clarity, I am no longer available for anything that requires my self-abandonment. This is not selfishness. It is alignment. Because when you show up whole, when you no longer need validation to breathe, you give others permission to do the same. You become a mirror of possibility, a quiet revolution, a reminder that we do not need to walk the world half alive. Choosing yourself is not turning away from others. It is turning toward the truth that allows genuine connection to exist at all. And when you do this, when you stand fully in your own worth, the entire field shifts. The world responds. Your reality reorganizes around the frequency of someone who knows their value. And nothing, absolutely nothing, becomes impossible. You become a mirror that reflects back their own potential for self-love. You become the quiet invitation for them to remember the parts of themselves they long ago exiled. And in doing so, you stop participating in the collective agreement that says we must all remain fractured, seeking endlessly fixing ourselves to earn a sense of worth that was never meant to be conditional. You withdraw your energy from the old paradigm, the one built on scarcity, on striving, on the silent desperation that whispers, we are never quite enough. And so, for a moment, take a breath. Take a pause. Place your awareness on this single declaration and let it echo through your system. I choose to remain at my own side. Not as a fleeting thought or a comment typed out of habit, but as a conscious interruption. As a shift in the timeline of your life. As an energetic declaration that ends the long lineage of self-abandonment running through your nervous system like an inherited script. Your words are not ornaments. They are not decorative syllables on a screen. They are signals, vibrational codes that your consciousness receives and begins to reorganize around. When you speak an intention with sincerity, the quantum field registers it. Your cells register it. The entire architecture of your being listens and begins to recalibrate. So speak it. Claim it. Let the field hear what you are choosing. Because when this choice becomes genuine, when it becomes embodied rather than intellectual, something profound happens. Your tolerance for mistreatment begins to fall to zero. Not as a reaction, not out of bitterness or revenge, but from an inner clarity so clean it feels like light. You simply cannot return to what required your self-erasure. You cannot unknow the truth that has awakened inside you. The mismatch becomes too loud, too draining, too obviously misaligned. And so you begin to move differently through the world. You speak with a steadier voice. You choose with a clearer instinct. You walk with a presence that does not ask permission to exist. It is not that you are trying to create a new future. It is that you are finally aligned with the most honest version of yourself. This alignment, this coherence is what people sense when they say something about you has changed. They feel the shift in your field. They feel the steadiness. They feel the absence of fragmentation. For the first time, you are no longer broadcasting contradictory signals, no longer saying yes when your soul means no, no longer staying when your body aches to leave, no longer loving in ways that require you to disappear. You have become singular in your intention, unified, clear. This coherence is magnetic. And reality, which has been waiting patiently for you to return to yourself, begins to reorganize around your new frequency. But let us be honest, not everyone will celebrate this shift. Some will resist it. Some will attempt to pull you back into the versions of yourself that existed for their comfort. Some will interpret your growth as rejection. This is not their fault. It is fear of change, fear of losing access to the more convenient version of you, fear of confronting their own unhealed patterns. But their fear is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to honor the covenant you have made with yourself, to remain loyal to the truth that is unfolding inside you. Because every time you silence yourself to keep the peace, you commit a kind of violence against your own soul. And it is subtle, quiet, almost invisible. It slips into your life disguised as love, as sacrifice, as maturity. But self-erasure is not devotion. It is fear wearing the mask of care. True love, whether from yourself or from someone else, never demands your disappearance. It never asks you to shrink or apologize for your needs. True love expands you. It honors your boundaries. It celebrates your existence without requiring you to fracture yourself to stay connected. And so when you release what no longer serves you, it will feel like a small death. Because it is. It is the death of an identity built on being useful, needed, accommodating. It is the death of a story that says your worth is measured by how little you ask for. And like all deaths, it will feel unsettling, even frightening. Your system will panic. Your mind will craft 1,000 narratives about why you should go back, why it wasn't that bad, why you're being too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. But these are the last echoes of the old program trying to survive. Breathe into this moment. Feel what contracts inside you when you imagine standing unapologetically in your worth. Feel the collapse when you picture saying no without justification. Feel the numbness when you imagine walking away from someone who cannot meet you. These contractions are maps. They show you where the wounds live. They show you where your self-love must deepen, not where you should abandon yourself further. If these words touch something you've been circling around, then stay with this frequency. Not for entertainment, not for distraction, but for remembrance. Remembrance of who you were before the world convinced you to forget. Remembrance of the self that refused to disappear. Because choosing yourself is not a single moment, it is a practice, a recalibration, a return. And here is where the quantum shift reveals itself. The moment you choose yourself, you choose a new timeline. This is not poetic metaphor. It is literal physics. Every choice collapses infinite possibilities into one lived reality. When you were choosing self-abandonment, you collapsed into timelines that reflected that frequency, relationships that mirrored your wounds, opportunities that reinforced your doubt, experiences that kept you looping in smallness. But when you choose self-loyalty, you collapse into timelines where respect is the baseline, where your boundaries are met rather than negotiated, where your presence is celebrated rather than tolerated. This is why the work must happen internally before anything external can change. You cannot manipulate your way into alignment. You cannot perform your way into belonging. You cannot strategize your way into a life that honors you. You must become the frequency you wish to experience. And once you do, the world responds not because you forced it, but because resonance is the law. Still, many resist this truth because it places responsibility, not blame, but responsibility squarely in their own hands. Blame is heavy. Responsibility is powerful. Blame says, I am helpless. Responsibility says, I get to choose differently now. Victim consciousness asks nothing of you but endurance. But self-responsibility asks you to rise, to shift, to participate in your own becoming. And the moment you accept that the old timeline dissolves, a new one opens, and life begins to meet you in the exact way you have finally chosen to meet yourself. Once that shift occurs, once you genuinely embody the truth of your worth, the external world has no choice but to mirror that back to you. Not because you are manipulating reality, not because you have figured out some secret formula to bend the universe to your will, but because you are finally moving in harmony with what has always been true. And yet, most people resist this truth with remarkable persistence. They resist it because it places responsibility exactly where they do not want it, in their own hands. It is far easier to blame circumstances, to point fingers at fate, at other people, at upbringing, at bad luck, at the universe being unfair. It is far easier to live in victim consciousness because victim consciousness demands nothing of you, not change, not courage, not accountability, only endurance. But sovereignty, true sovereignty, calls you into a different relationship with yourself. It requires you to own your power fully, to acknowledge the ways you have been participating in your own diminishment. Not intentionally, most of it happens beneath awareness, but consistently. And the moment you acknowledge that you have been unconsciously creating the reality you feel trapped in, you also reclaim the power to create something entirely different. This is not blame. This is liberation. Because if you played a role in shaping what hurts you, you also hold the power to shape what heals you. So what does choosing yourself actually look like in the most ordinary moments of a day? It looks like pausing before you automatically say yes when your body is screaming no. It looks like speaking your truth even when your voice trembles, even when you fear you may lose something or someone by doing so. It looks like walking away from relationships, conversations, or environments that continuously dishonor your heart, even when leaving feels like stepping into a void. It looks like learning to sit with your own company without immediately reaching for distraction, without numbing, without shrinking from the parts of yourself you have been avoiding. Choosing yourself looks like tending to yourself with the same gentleness and generosity you offer so effortlessly to others. It looks like ending the war within. Because here is a truth many people never confront: the harshest critic you will ever encounter is the one living inside your own mind. The fiercest judgment, the most unforgiving accusations, those come from within. You speak to yourself in ways you would never speak to another human being. You hold yourself to impossible standards. You punish yourself long after others have forgiven and moved on. This internal violence, this constant self-attack, creates a frequency of unworthiness that filters everything, every choice, every relationship, every opportunity. You cannot feel worthy of love while waging war on yourself. You cannot attract respect when you continually override your own boundaries. You cannot build a life of peace when your inner world is a battlefield. Choosing yourself means calling a ceasefire. It means putting down the weapons you've been using against your own heart. It means turning toward the parts of yourself you've exiled, the parts you labeled too much, not enough, unlovable, inconvenient. It means welcoming them back home. All of them. The messy parts, the angry parts, the fearful parts, the parts still carrying childhood wounds, the parts that made mistakes you regret, the parts that feel needy, sensitive, or different. Every one of them is asking for the same thing: to be acknowledged, held, and told that they belong. If you were to choose one word that captures the energy you want to embody going forward, just one word, what would it be? Not a word that sounds poetic, not a word that performs well for others, but a word that resonates in your bone. This word becomes your energetic signature, your declaration, your signal to the quantum field of who you are becoming. And make no mistake, the world responds. As more of us choose this path, as more of us honor ourselves as sacred, the collective field begins to shift. Slowly at first, then unmistakably. Self-love stops being radical and becomes natural. Boundaries stop being a luxury and become a norm. Choosing yourself transforms from a rebellious act into an expression of alignment. If you haven't subscribed to this frequency yet, do it now, not for entertainment, but for coherence, for remembrance. Because the world will try to pull you back into old patterns. Algorithms will distract you. Old wounds will whisper old stories. And the mind terrified of change will try to convince you that wanting more is unrealistic, idealistic, or selfish. But in a community of people choosing themselves too, you stay anchored. You stay seen. You stay reminded. You stay aligned. What we're exploring here is only the beginning of how internal choices orchestrate external transformation through quantum principles. If you sense deeper layers underneath this, you're absolutely right. In Beyond the Frequencies, I outline the entire blueprint, how to move from unconscious transmission to becoming the conscious broadcast itself, how to stabilize your frequency, how to shift from seeking worthiness to embodying it as your natural baseline. And the practice of choosing yourself, it deepens over time. At first, it feels awkward, like speaking a language you barely remember. You will doubt yourself. You will question whether you are being too rigid, too closed off, too much. These doubts are not truth. They are the old programming trying to reassert itself, the internal voice, terrified that if you stop people-pleasing and stop shrinking, you will end up alone. But here is what actually happens when you stop accepting breadcrumbs, when you stop settling for partial love, when you stop tolerating disrespect disguised as affection. You create space. And though the space feels empty at first, it is the most fertile ground you will ever stand upon. In that space, your true voice returns. The voice that has been drowned beneath obligations, expectations, and the noise of trying to be who others wanted. The voice that knows what brings you alive, knows what drains your soul, knows the difference between genuine connection and convenient attachment. That voice has never disappeared. It has only been waiting for silence so it can speak. And once you hear it, once you honor it, your entire inner landscape begins to shift. Not with fireworks or cinematic transformation, but like a slow, steady unfolding. Like a river carving its way through stone, not rushed but unstoppable. You begin to notice which relationships nourish you and which ones deplete you. You begin to feel in your body the subtle misalignment when someone's words do not match their energy. You begin to recognize when a situation requires you to betray yourself in order to participate. And instead of overriding that knowing like you once did, you honor it. You let it guide you toward truth and away from illusion. This discernment is the gift. This new clarity is the compass. This is the quiet but profound transformation that choosing yourself creates. And once you begin, there is no going back. You start noticing the relationships that drain you versus the ones that nourish you, sometimes subtly, sometimes in ways that feel like a sudden jolt to the nervous system. You start recognizing the difference between someone who is genuinely interested in you, your inner world, your essence, your presence, and someone who is only interested in what you can do for them, who sees you as a resource rather than a being. And the more attuned you become, the more you feel these truths in your body, often before your mind has time to interpret them. You sense when something is not aligned, when there is a faint tension in your chest or a tightening in your stomach that whispers, "This isn't right." You notice when someone's words sound sweet, but their energy feels hollow, when their promises are enthusiastic, but their actions are lifeless. You recognize when a situation is asking you subtly or blatantly to betray yourself just to maintain harmony, to belong, or to be accepted. And instead of overriding those signals the way you used to, ignoring your discomfort, silencing your intuition, explaining away the contradiction, you begin to trust yourself. You stop gaslighting your own body. You stop dismissing your sensitivity as paranoia, neediness, or overreaction. You honor the signals. You let them guide you toward what is true and away from what is false. This level of discernment becomes one of the greatest gifts of choosing yourself. Because when you are committed to self-abandonment, when you have built your identity around pleasing others or earning approval, your inner compass becomes scrambled. You cannot trust your instincts because you have spent years, sometimes decades, ignoring them. You cannot hear your intuition because you have drowned it in the noise of societal expectation, cultural programming, and the desperate desire to be liked. You cannot sense alignment because you have grown accustomed to twisting yourself into shapes that were never meant for you. But the moment you commit to yourself genuinely, wholeheartedly, the moment you decide that your inner knowing matters more than your fear of being alone, more than your fear of being wrong, more than your fear of being perceived as too much or too sensitive, the compass recalibrates. It clears. It begins pointing true north again. And true north is always without exception toward your highest alignment. If you are feeling this, breathe into it. Let it land in your body. Now, here is something that most spiritual teachings often misunderstand. Alignment is not about feeling good all the time. It is not about floating on a cloud of bliss untouched by the complexities of life. It is not about bypassing discomfort or transcending your humanity. Alignment is about congruence, about your inner truth matching your outer expression. It is about your actions reflecting your values, your choices honoring your boundaries, and your life becoming a mirror for your internal integrity. You can be aligned and still feel grief, deep, agonizing grief. You can be aligned and still feel anger that shakes you. You can be aligned and still feel completely lost, confused, unsure of what comes next. The difference is that when you are aligned, you do not abandon yourself in the midst of those emotions. You do not shame yourself for feeling them. You do not shrink or hide or numb to avoid them. Instead, you stay present. You remain with yourself. You let the emotion move through you without assigning it meaning about your worth. This is where true transformation occurs, not in the avoidance of pain, but in the recognition that your pain does not diminish your value. You can feel heartbroken and still know you are whole. You can feel rejected and still know you are worthy. You can feel overwhelmed and still trust that you are exactly where you need to be, even if you cannot yet see the path forward. Because your worth is not fragile. It is not conditional. It is not tethered to whether someone chooses you or validates you or understands you. Your worth is inherent, unchanging, unmoving, embedded in the core of your being. When you anchor into this truth deeply, when you stop outsourcing your value to relationships, achievements, or circumstances, you become unshakable, not hard, not impenetrable, simply rooted, grounded, unmoved from your center. Life can move you, people can touch you, experiences can impact you, but nothing can uproot you. This is the power of self-love, not the superficial performative version that is often marketed, but the kind that becomes a fortress within you. Not a fortress that keeps others out, but one that keeps you in, keeps you connected to what is real when the world would rather pull you into illusion. And here lies the paradox: the more you commit to yourself, the more open you become to genuine connection with others. When you are no longer using relationships to fill a void, validate your existence, or soothe unhealed wounds, you become capable of loving with clarity rather than attachment. You can meet others as equals, not saviors or solutions. You can offer love without losing yourself. You can receive love without compromising your boundaries. You can give without depletion because you are giving from fullness rather than scarcity. This is mature love, conscious love, love that expands rather than contracts, love that liberates rather than entangles. And it is only possible when both people have done the inner work of choosing themselves first. Most people skip this step. They go from relationship to relationship, hoping the next person will be the one who finally makes them feel whole. But no one can love you into wholeness. No one can respect you into self-respect. No one can heal wounds you refuse to face. Wholeness is an inside job, and it requires your participation, your presence, your willingness to choose yourself every single day, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it feels unfamiliar, even when the old patterns are calling you back with the false promise of safety. Because familiar suffering can feel safer than unfamiliar freedom. Let that settle. Your system knows how to survive pain. It has strategies, defenses, coping mechanisms. It has built an entire architecture around enduring environments that do not honor you. But freedom, true freedom, requires dismantling that architecture. It requires stepping into the unknown without evidence, without guarantees, without a clear map. And the mind terrified of uncertainty creates stories to protect you. If you set this boundary, they will leave. If you speak this truth, you will be judged. If you choose yourself, you will end up alone. And maybe some of those things will happen. Some people will leave. Some relationships will end. Some chapters will close. But solitude is not the enemy. Aloneness is not loneliness. Aloneness is the quiet space where you return to yourself. Loneliness is what you feel when you abandon yourself. You have been lonely in rooms full of people. You have been lonely in relationships where you weren't seen. You have been lonely while performing a version of yourself that never truly belonged to you. And that loneliness is far more painful than the aloneness that comes with honoring your truth. Because when you are alone but aligned, you have your own presence, your own companionship, your own essence. And in that sacred intimacy with yourself, you become whole again. Pause here. Breathe. Notice what arises. Notice where you feel resistance, where fear begins to whisper old stories, where your mind tries to apply this wisdom to everyone except you. That is the pattern. That is the trap. You cannot offer nourishment you do not give yourself. You cannot teach boundaries while violating your own. You cannot preach self-love while practicing self-betrayal. So before you rush to integrate this for others, turn inward. Ask yourself, where in my life am I choosing someone else's comfort over my own truth? Where am I saying yes when my body is pleading for no? Where am I staying silent to keep the peace while losing myself in the process? Where am I holding on when I know it is time to let go? Those questions are uncomfortable, but discomfort is not a sign you are on the wrong path. It is a sign you have touched something real, something ready to shift if you allow it. Do not turn away. Do not minimize what is rising within you. Do not numb yourself back into the familiar. This is the work. This is where choosing yourself becomes a lived practice, not a spiritual idea. And when this shift happens at the deepest level, something extraordinary takes place in the quantum field. Your frequency stabilizes. You stop oscillating between extremes: worthiness and unworthiness, confidence and self-doubt, clarity and confusion. Your energy becomes coherent, unified, integrated. Coherence means all parts of you are aligned, moving in the same direction, vibrating in the same truth. And from this state, reality begins to reorganize itself around you, not because you forced it, but because you finally became the clearest, truest version of yourself. You stop oscillating between worthiness and unworthiness, between confidence and doubt, between self-love and self-attack. The pendulum that once swung so violently inside you begins to slow, then steady, then finally settle into stillness. You become coherent in your energy signature, no longer divided against yourself. And coherence in quantum terms means that every part of you, your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, your instinct, your intuition begins to synchronize, to communicate, to vibrate together rather than in conflict. When you are coherent, you emit a clear signal to the universe. You are no longer sending mixed messages. You are no longer saying, I am worthy with your words, while broadcasting, I am not enough with your energy. The field reads coherence. It responds to coherence. And when you are coherent in your self-worth, the field organizes itself around that frequency. Reality rearranges subtly at first, then unmistakably. This is not manifestation in the way it is commonly taught, where you try to manipulate reality into giving you what you want. It is not about forcing outcomes, visualizing harder, or reciting affirmations until you are exhausted. This is alignment. This is embodiment. This is becoming the frequency of what you desire so completely that the universe has no choice but to reflect it back to you. Not because you are demanding it, but because you have become harmonious with the natural laws that govern reality. You are no longer at war with yourself. You are no longer performing or pretending or reaching for something outside of you. You are simply being fully, radically, unapologetically being who you are. And that beingness is magnetic. People will feel the shift in you, even if they cannot name it. Something in your presence changes. Something quiet but unmistakable. They will sense that you are no longer available for the old dynamics, that you have moved into a different frequency, one where your boundaries are not suggestions, one where your truth is not negotiable, one where your self-respect is not up for discussion. Some will rise to meet you there. They will soften. They will respect your boundaries. They will honor your truth. They will celebrate your evolution, not because it benefits them, but because they value you. These are your people. These are the relationships that are meant to continue. But some will resist. They will test you. They will question your changes. They will attempt to pull you back into the patterns that kept them comfortable. They may push against your new boundaries, not always out of malice, but out of habit. They want to know if the old version of you still exists, the one who overgave, over-explained, over-apologized, overextended. The version of you that was easier to control, easier to predict, easier to depend on in ways that drained you. And this is where your commitment to yourself will be tested. This is where your inner alignment will be asked to prove itself. You will have to choose again and again to honor your truth, even when it costs you something, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it would be easier to go back to the way things were. Do not go back. No matter how tempting it is, no matter how familiar it feels, no matter how much someone pressures you to return to the role you once played, going back is not the same as returning home. Going back is exile from yourself, and you have spent too much of your life in exile. You have wandered long enough in the wilderness of other people's expectations. You have tried long enough to be a version of yourself that made others feel safe or satisfied, even when it suffocated you. You have spent years bending yourself into shapes that the world rewarded, even as your spirit fractured under the pressure. That ends now. That ends the moment you choose yourself. That ends the moment you decide that your inner peace is more valuable than external approval. This does not mean you become cold or distant or indifferent to others. It means you become discerning. It means you stop giving your energy to people and situations that do not reciprocate, that do not honor who you are. It means you begin investing in relationships that nourish rather than drain you, that are built on authenticity rather than performance. And yes, this may mean your circle gets smaller. It may mean there are evenings where you sit in silence rather than in company that leaves you feeling empty. But the quality of your connections will deepen because you are no longer filling your life with people who only want access to what you can give them. You are surrounding yourself with people who value who you are. The moment you choose yourself, you also choose a different relationship with time. You stop rushing. You stop measuring your worth by productivity. You stop forcing things to happen according to timelines that never belong to you. You begin trusting the unfolding. You honor your own rhythm, your own pace, your own seasons. You give yourself permission to move slowly when you need to move slowly, to rest when you need to rest, to say not yet when something demands urgency that your soul cannot provide. This is not procrastination. This is not laziness. This is wisdom. This is the intelligence of alignment. Your body has been trying to tell you things for years. It has whispered through discomfort, murmured through intuition, called through emotion. But the world trained you to override those signals, to trust logic over instinct, to push through pain, to dismiss your own awareness. You have ignored the tightness in your chest, the knot in your stomach, the heaviness in your limbs. You have pushed forward when your body begged you to stop. You have said yes when every cell in you screamed no. Eventually, your body learned you were not listening. So it stopped whispering and started shouting through illness, through burnout, through exhaustion. No amount of sleep could fix. This was never punishment. It was communication. It was your most loyal ally doing everything it could to guide you back to yourself. Choosing yourself means choosing to listen again. It means reestablishing sacred communication with your body. It means asking, "What do you need?" and actually pausing to hear the answer. It means honoring your limits instead of bulldozing past them. It means recognizing that rest is not weakness, boundaries are not selfishness, and saying no is not failure. These lies, "push through, be useful, don't disappoint," were planted in you by cultures and systems that benefit from your exhaustion. But you do not owe anyone your depletion. You do not owe anyone access to your energy when you have nothing to give. You do not owe anyone an explanation for choosing yourself. This is your life, your one wild, precious, irretrievably brief life. And you are allowed to live it in a way that honors your truth, protects your peace, and celebrates your existence. You are allowed to disappoint people if staying in their good graces requires abandoning yourself. You are allowed to be misunderstood, to be judged, to be called selfish by people who benefited from your self-sacrifice. None of that changes your worth. None of that diminishes your value. None of that means you chose wrong. If these words are landing deeply, revisit them tomorrow morning before the day begins. Let them recalibrate your system while your heart is still quiet. And if someone in your life needs to hear this, share it with them. When you transmit these truths outward, you reinforce them within yourself, creating a feedback loop of coherence that accelerates your transformation. And when the night grows heavy again, because it will when your heart forgets its value, because it might place your hand on your chest and feel the steady rhythm beneath your palm, remember you are the companion who has never left, the guardian who has never faltered, the sanctuary you carry within. No matter who comes or goes, no matter what falls apart or what begins again, do not abandon the essence that stayed when everything else dissolved. Do not turn your back on the consciousness that kept you alive when living felt impossible. That part of you is not just worthy of love. That part of you is love itself. And the moment you remember that, the moment you choose it, the moment you embody it, reality has no option but to change for you. Now, here's what you must understand about this internal shift and why it transforms your external world so quickly. Your nervous system is the gateway. When you are trapped in survival mode, constantly abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable, your system cannot receive the frequency of self-worth, no matter how much you say you want it, no matter how many affirmations you repeat. If you want this shift to land, to take root, to last, you must reset the internal environment that holds all your patterns. And I've created a complete guide on resetting your nervous system so these shifts can anchor into your body and become your new baseline for living. Watch that next, because you cannot manifest anything real or lasting until your nervous system remembers that you are safe, you are worthy, and you are allowed to choose yourself.